There's a lot of things that can go wrong in business. And in the next few podcast episodes, in particular, this is the first one, we're going to cover the major things that can kill your business if you don't do something about it. So if you're falling into one of these traps, you'll want to keep listening. All right. So stay tuned and keep listening now. All right. I'm Joe Silva. This is the Joe Silva Business Show. And we're talking about things that can kill your business. All right. This is one of those things out there where I'm doing coaching with entrepreneurs, and I'm one myself. But when I'm doing coaching, these things keep repeating and keep coming up with clients, keep coming up with those that I'm helping. And so I want to share this information out there because it's very, very common. All right. We're going to go through a series of episodes here, and there's likely 7 major business killing death traps that you may be running into as well. And if you don't fix these things, I call these a death trap because it can be a trap. It can look like you're doing what needs to be done, but if you don't fix this, it's going to be too late, right? So if you continue on a path of doing these things that we're going to talk about, it can spell the end of your business. And statistically speaking, we all have heard the SBA, 1 in 3 businesses shuts down within 2 years, right? You don't want that to be you, right? You don't want that to be me either. None of us want that to be us, right? But statistically speaking, it happens. And these 7 things we're going to talk about over this episode and the next few are some of the most major business killing habits, ideas, things that can happen that you get trapped in that most people don't talk about. All right. So this is a little bit different angle. So what you're going to learn in this video is all about motivation. All right. Now I know you've heard about being motivated before. You might want to be more motivated, but this is a different way to look at it. So you're going to want to watch this till the end because you will find it very, very valuable in what you do day in and day out to take your business to the next level. All right. Now, this again is I cover a lot of this in my coaching with clients. I'm bringing this to you on the podcast because it's important. It's that critical that you can stay motivated the right way. Right. And there's a lot more to this. We're going to cover the top 3 pieces of this. There's a lot more that goes into it. Again, that's for another time, another program, whatever it would be. But in this podcast episode, we're going to cover the top 3 areas of motivation because that's important to you. And that's what we have time for today. All right. So now, typically what happens when it comes to motivation is that most entrepreneurs, at the beginning of their business are super motivated, right? Think back to when you started your business. You want to get out there, you want to conquer the world, right? You've got big dreams, big goals, big everything, because that's what you are. You're a visionary, right? Over time, however, what can happen, and this happened to me, is you get so caught up in the day-to-day, you get so caught up with what is urgent right in front of your face that you lose sight of all the other things that were originally motivating you to begin with, right? Those big dreams, those big goals, maybe it's income, maybe it's impact, maybe it's helping people, whatever it is, right? Those things kind of seem off in the distance when you're in the weeds day in and day out. And what can happen is you become disconnected from your business. You become disconnected from your vision, the original vision that you started your business in the first place, right? So I call that the disconnected visionary. This was me. This was me in my business for a long time where I lost track and lost sight of everything I was even doing for, right? Like I was working the 12+ hour days. I was working the weekends. I was constantly in my business and I didn't even know why. Everything I was doing was, we're going to get to this in a little bit in this episode, but everything I was doing was demotivating, right? It was draining my energy. I didn't like anything I was doing in my business. And you may feel that way at times as well, right? When you're dealing with a difficult customer, when you're doing all the mundane stuff like the graphics or the accounting or whatever it is, right? All these things that have to be done in your business, right? Maybe you have to hire somebody or fire somebody, whatever it is. All these things that have to be done take away from that original vision and therefore are demotivating. We're going to get more into that in a little bit. Well, what can happen is as you do these things and you struggle and you feel like you're treading water at best and you're underwater at worst, what can happen is you lose all sense of purpose in your business, right? And that shows up in how the results are coming, right? The number of clients you're getting, the amount of revenue, the amount of impact, all the things that you started your business in the first place, right? As a entrepreneur, you have high performance standards, right? You have drive to do more and you want to achieve your dreams and goals. And a big part of that is getting motivated the right way. And taking the steps to get motivated is not always understood, right? And here's one of the biggest mistakes, one of the biggest business killing traps death traps, as I like to call it, that can happen is when entrepreneurs think that motivation is an external thing, right? I have to get motivated from something else, right? Maybe it's a song to pump me up. Maybe it's a new client I'm going after, right? Maybe I have to impress somebody. Those are all external things outside of ourselves that can cause some motivation, right? It can cause us a little bit to be motivated. I saw some social media posts the other day that I found interesting. There was two separate ones back to back, and essentially the gist of it was, if I had $1 million, I'd give it to my biggest enemy because that would motivate me to pass them up, right? I would hustle and grind and work harder than ever to pass up my enemy if they had that million. That's an external thing, right? That will fade off, that will eventually fade away. So what happens if that person skips town, right? You never hear from them again. Maybe they leave the industry. You're like, okay, where's my motivation at? Right? So relying on external things is pretty obvious, is a risky maneuver, because once you don't have that external thing anymore, right? If the song is over, right? I used to do this. I used to listen to some music, and it's okay to get pumped up once in a while, right? But to rely on that, right? Once that song is over, what happens, right? You're down again, right? Unmotivated again. You're back to the day-to-day mundane stuff. And you're like, well, what do I do now? Okay, so external wears off. External goes away. External is outside of our control. Now, as an entrepreneur, the very fact that you're an entrepreneur means you like to be in control. Otherwise, you'd be punching a clock working 9 to 5 for somebody. Am I right? So being out of control is allowing your motivation to be controlled by something outside of yourself. All right. When you rely on something else to be motivated, that's beyond your control. And you're going to be dependent on that thing to continue that motivation. Now, that's what most people do, is they rely on something else outside themselves. What's the alternative? All right. So this is step number one. I'll slow down here because this is critical as you listen to this to understand and really embrace this part, is that motivation starts right here. It's all internal, right? That means we're in control of when and how we're motivated and how much we're motivated within ourselves, right? And it means that we can actually access that motivation anytime we want it and anytime we need it, because we create it, just like we create our business. So understanding that motivation is internal is step number one to creating more motivation and getting out of, right, relying on others to be motivated. This is the common question I get from my coaching clients is, hey, I'm not feeling motivated today. What can I do, right? Well, it's about creating an internal state. And there's different ways to do that. We'll get into one in a little bit, which is a mental shift, right? There's some actual physical things that you can do to remind yourself of past times you're motivated and things like that. But just understand that through all this, motivation is internal. It starts within you. And after you realize that, that means you can get motivated anytime you want. All right. So step number two now is creating a plan of action for motivation. All right. A lot of us as entrepreneurs, we're all over the place, right? We've got things over here. We've got things over there. We've got fires down here. We've got plates to spin up there. There's all kinds of chaos in our world of entrepreneurship. That's normal. Get it, right? But here's the thing, right? Scientific fact here is that the more incomplete items you have within your own mind, the more draining those items are, right? Think about it like your computer operating system, right? You've got 100 tabs open. If you're like me, you've got 100 tabs open on your computer. But if that computer doesn't have enough memory to run all those tabs or those programs or Excel sheets or whatever else you have, right, it starts to slow down, right? You see this when your computer gets a little older or your phone gets a little older, right? Is the memory can't handle how much programs are running. And so our minds are very, very similar to that. And the more incomplete projects we have, the more things that are kind of floating out there for us mentally, the more that's draining to you. And the more draining it is, the less motivating everything it can be. That's when overwhelm sets in, right? You can see all those things just floating out there and like, I can't handle it. That is demotivating. That's the opposite, all right? Now, when you put a plan of action in place, when you have a roadmap in front of you, that here I am, right? Here's my destination, and here are the steps I need to do to get there, that can start to energize anybody. That's when motivation begins, because you have a clear path, right? Think about when you have a really messy room, right? If you have kids or maybe yourself, right? Whatever it is, maybe you have that one room in your house that is like a disaster. Maybe it's your basement or a playroom or whatever it is, right? I've had these, right? I went through this recently where we cleaned some stuff out. Just think about that. And when you sit down there and look, and it's just, there's so much that you're like, I don't even know where to begin, right? That's all the incomplete thought processes in your mind. But as you start to make a plan and you're like, okay, I'm going to start in this corner, I'm going to move this here, suddenly a path opens up and becomes more clear, and you get more motivated to finish the job, right? So the more little things you can complete, the more energized you are to complete even more. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a spiral, right? An upward spiral where as you complete more, you get more energized and more motivated, right? So when you have a plan of action in place and one that you'll follow through with, that's when motivation hits another level, right? I was working with a client and they were doing well in their business, right? They had actually reached some goals and things like that, but they weren't quite where they wanted to be, right? They were starting to get really overwhelmed with the day-to-day tasks, everything. So we mapped out a plan from where they wanted to be till today. We broke it down into small, detailed chunks, and it worked wonders. And this is typically what we do when we're doing some coaching, is to make that plan, make it achievable, make it small details that you can achieve, and it takes you towards your goal. That motivates you because you're taking little action towards your goal. So having a plan of action and putting that into place, right? You know your outcome, you are motivated to get there after you figure that out, all right? So that's number 2. Number 3, talk about that a lot, this one a lot on this show, and this is important as well, is living with purpose, right? And that's not just starting a, let's say, an insurance company because you think you'll make money, right? I've been there. I've done things like this. It's living, even if you have an insurance company, there's parts of that business that really light you up, that really energize you. Maybe it's the marketing, maybe it's making video, maybe it's customer service, maybe it's creating new ideas, whatever it is, it's focusing in on that piece and that part only. And that's how you're going to be motivated to do more, right? This takes a mental shift, right? When you live with purpose and you're doing purposeful things in your business, those purposeful things are now motivating things because you want to do them. So it's as simple as do what is motivating to you within your business. All those things that drain you, all those things that take your energy, all those things that drive you nuts, that's what you delegate and get off your plate. All right. So it's a mental shift. This can take a mental shift from going from doing to stepping into leadership, to actually leading yourself and your business to another level, right? Shifting that idea in your mind of, I have to do everything, to, I'm going to focus on what motivates me. Those things that don't motivate you, those are the things that need to stay out and need to be delegated to others within your company or maybe outside, whatever it is. You're not motivated to do those, get them off your plate. Now, that sometimes can sound easier said than done, but this concept we're talking about today is about living with purpose and leading with purpose within your business. Because when you do motivating things, you are now motivated, right? And you can tap into that internal state again, we mentioned earlier, anytime you want to access that motivation. So those are the 3 things that are key to understand when it comes to motivation, all right? Now, we've gone over realizing and understanding that motivation is actually internal rather than external. That's important, right? Creating a plan of action for yourself and for where you want to go, from your vision to your goal, your end result, right? That's also important. And then doing motivating things, living that purposeful journey within your business, leading with a purpose rather than just getting hung up in the day-to-day things like most entrepreneurs do. Those 3 steps are critical. You've learned that today, right? And the first step to getting there is taking a mental shift and allowing yourself to think big, right? To remember the dreams you had when you started your business. Think back for a second, right? Just close your eyes for a minute, unless you're driving, don't do that. But just think back, or running on a treadmill or something, don't do it then either. But just think back to a time when you were super excited about your business, about doing something in your business. Maybe that was starting, right? Maybe that was getting a new client, whatever it was. Think about how excited you were when you were there thinking of those big goals, those big dreams, right? Often today, you might get caught up in the day-to-day, start to feel exhausted, feel tired. You just want the day to end, only you're going to do it all again tomorrow. All right. So step one of shifting out of that, mentally shifting away from do and shifting into leading, is simply creating that state where you can actually remember your dreams, remember your vision, and think big, right? Not just, well, I've got to pay this bill and I've got to put in the accounting and I've got to make this web page and then create this email funnel. Forget all of that, right? Nobody's dreaming of that stuff when you start your business. You want to dream big, right? I want to impact 1 million people. I want to make $1 million. I want to be a leader of a team, whatever it is, right? That's where you start things off at. And I've got the perfect resource. Go to joesovatraining.com and find my mind map audio. This is all about thinking big. This is all about shifting your mentality from do into leading and getting those dreams reality. It's a free gift for you. So if you're serious about creating another level for your business, go there now, joesovatraining.com, and download this free audio mind map. You'll be glad you did. All right. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you on the next episode.